I would describe Pride as a happy time. It looks incredibly colourful. It just sounds like everyone is united. It sounds like everybody is together.
There's always like a buzz about Pride, like a really happy, friendly buzz.
There's music, there's drums.
And rainbows and waving flags.
Lots of whistles and chants.
Lots of people covered in glitter.
Lots of glitter.
Loads of glitter.
Glitter everywhere you look.
It's just so much fun.
Pride to me is a big old celebration of where we've been, where we've come from, and LGBT culture and rights and love and acceptance.
It just feels like everyone is there for one reason, and it's a positive reason.
There is a real joyful, rebellious energy about Pride.
So everyone's there to enjoy themselves, everyone's there to protest. You feel safe, you feel protected.
It feels like such a safe space.
Pride for me is the one day of the year where we're in the majority.
Pride is love.
Unifying.
Pride is a phenomenon.
Pride is sexy. Sexy.
Pride to me is also about joy. It's about fun.
Pride is family, is togetherness.
A privilege. I would say it's a privilege to be able to organise a Pride. It's a privilege to be able to attend a Pride. If it wasn't for the people back at the Stonewall, would our rights be as far as they are today? It's a privilege that that happened.
Children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay. All of those children are being cheated of a sound start in life. Yes, cheated.
The 80s was a cataclysmic period for the LGBT community. A lot changed in that particular decade.
It was pretty tough for a lot of us, and even tougher for people that went before us.
Being a gay person growing up and not having anyone to talk to about it in school was quite difficult, and you tried to hide it as much as you could.
I remember it well. You're questioning who and what you are, but you couldn't turn to a teacher for support.
It prevented teachers from helping pupils, which is what teachers are there for. And it created a climate of fear where being gay couldn't be discussed. And so I had huge fears and anxieties. You know, was I going to go to jail if I fell in love with somebody? Was I going to die if I caught a disease after falling in love with somebody?
This teacher said to me that you need to be careful who you tell. You might get excluded and removed from the school because you will be seen as a danger to the other children. And that was because of Section 28, because I was openly gay in high school.
I, as a teacher, was outed before I'd even got a job by a woman who was a complete homophobe. And I got called in and told, they all know, every single pupil, every single teacher, all of the support staff, right up to the headmaster. And it seemed fine, but it wasn't fine because, of course, 4 or 5 weeks later, the parents that didn't like it would crowd around my car. So at night, I'd be trying to get into my car, finishing rehearsals after school hours, and there'd be people sat on my bonnet and stuff. And I went and said, I don't feel safe. And they were like, there's not a lot we can do. Because according to Section 28, they're in the right. Because your very existence in the school as an out gay man is breaching Section 28.
I think, some of that stuff is really quite traumatic for lots of us to continue to go back and revisit.
It was a wrong piece of legislation. Thank God it's gone, but for so many people it's still got repercussions.
I've seen many other people go down the route of self-destruction and death because they thought that that was the only route that society had for them. My community has been racked with that, and then other mainstream society has the privilege of not even knowing what that is.
Soon after I came to Edinburgh, Section 28 came along.
a bunch of us met up and decided to form an organisation to combat Section 28. And we organised a number of demonstrations. We did the Lark in the Park in '88 and in '89, and they were really groundbreaking at the time.
There were a lot of smaller Pride events in Scotland prior to what we class as the big one. And the big one came along in 1995. Some volunteers got together and just decided it would be great if we could have a Pride in Edinburgh.
Yeah, we kind of persuaded ourselves to do something completely stupid and impossible.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because if we'd actually thought about it,
If we had any idea of what it would involve, we'd have run a mile at that point. We wouldn't have done any of it. If you think of the context of '95, Section 28 was in place. There was no equal age of consent yet. There was nothing remotely like civil partnership or equal marriage. The context in which people were participating in that public act was one in which it required bravery.
It felt safe, but it also felt really scary as well, because at that point in time, being visibly gay in the street was just unthinkable.
There was this feeling of like, is anybody going to be there? Who's going to be there? What's going to happen? Will we be pelted with stones?
I got a phone call from Tim at a point where it was just about, oh my God, nobody's coming. That's what's happening. Nobody's turned up. And I got this phone call, and it was just absolute cacophony of whistles and drums, because Shaboom, the women's drummers, were leading the march, and Tim was at the front. And he said he'd just spoken to the police guy who was with him, and their estimate was 3,000 people.
Like, there was so much emotion and eyes wide open, astonishment at everything, just being part of that, just being surrounded by so many other gay and lesbian people for the first time was just incredibly overwhelming.
I just remember this heady feeling of, these are my people, this is my community, I am not alone, and that was really special.
The thing about that, you look back and there was such an endless number of kindnesses. It was endless kindness.
I think that there was also an awful lot of people who were beginning to think about wanting something different for Scotland, wanting something that was a bit more forward. So 96 was Glasgow, and then it bounced back a couple of times. Both Dougie and I stepped down, still very much supporters.
Police will be keeping a particularly watchful eye on the march as it passes by the Bank of Scotland headquarters here on the Mound. The building's been picketed by gay campaigners in recent weeks over the proposed deal with the TV evangelist Dr. Pat Robertson, who described Scotland as a dark land overrun by homosexuals.
The '97 Blair government changed everything, and quite a fundamental way, everything. We had devolution for the first time. That devolution led to a parliament that better represented LGBT people and certainly better LGBT rights. So through the early 2000s, we were in the midst of, repealing Section 28. We were encouraging schools to be able to talk about LGBT culture and LGBT lives. We were improving the representation of LGBT issues in politics.
And what are some of the issues that are bringing people out today?
Well, this year it's going to be Section 28 and the whole debacle that we had over Section 28. And this is the real celebration of having finally got rid of the hideous law that it was. Gay and lesbian people throughout the country will be celebrating that fact.
That was the biggest difference. That's when people started to realise it serves no purpose. Why are we vilifying people because of who and what they are?
Lots of that comes from, Pride being a vehicle for social change. It's a bit of a spark actually for changing communities.
Pride is a protest.
Protest.
It is the protest.
That it's a very joyful protest.
When I say unity, you say love. Unity! Love! Unity! Love! Unity!
The feeling of, just marching as myself, but it's also safety in numbers, visibility, but it's the fact that you're surrounded by people like yourself and you didn't feel so alone. It was such an amazing feeling.
The speed that things have changed is a positive for me, and how accepting people have been of these changes. I do believe transgender rights are lagging behind, as usual, lagging behind. But I'm hopeful in seeing, I didn't think I would see same-sex marriage in my lifetime. I didn't see that. I didn't see hate crime bills going through the protections that we've got now. I didn't see that. So I hope that will just get reinforced as the years go on.
Pride is a protest, not just a party. It's not just a celebration of what we've achieved. It's a determination to stand, resolved to defend what we've achieved and achieve even more here and around the world.
You should have known that love doesn't show when you hold a gun. Isn't it lovely? Somebody loves me. It doesn't faze me. I don't think of you lately.
Yeah, that was quite a fun and exciting and happy time. I just remember the energy of people campaigning for it and the real joy that it passed.
Equal marriage was huge because it was something that I wasn't sure would ever happen in my lifetime, and marriage isn't for everybody, gay, straight, bisexual, whatever, but I think to have the same rights, the same levels of dignity and respect and legal protection, and I think that was absolutely gigantic, and I think that really did change a lot in the country.
I think in Scotland there's been a really strong stand with the LGBT community, with various political parties and public figures going along to the marches or leading the marches in various cities, and I think that's important to show society that it's at the core of the country.
It is such a privilege to be here. It's such a privilege to look out on Glasgow Green and see this sea of colour and unity and happiness and love.
There is that risk of box ticking. Oh, but we were at Pride. What does that mean for institutional homophobia? Or do you know what I mean? What does that mean for discrimination at work? That's not going to change that. So there needs to be more to it. Like Nicola Sturgeon marched at Pride. We're still waiting for the GRA reform. That's still going to be a big thing that we're going to protest about in the upcoming Prides. Where is it? We were promised it.
A number of us attended Brighton Trans Pride in 2016 from Scotland, but none of us went together as a group. We all just kind of ran into each other there and we're like, oh, lots of us travel all the way to Brighton for this. Do you think we should just do this at home?
It was different, Trans Pride, because I had never been in a room just with so many trans people, although there were, cis people there too, but the majority of us were trans, and it was an event just for us, something that was quite unimaginable.
Pride as a whole is normally fantastic, but lines can get crossed when it comes to big prides because so many big prides advertise themselves as a party and a parade when they just want to party and do silly things when we're still left without rights. Some were hidden in part of the community. So it's like, well, why don't we make our own? Therefore, all of our individual rights can be heard.
Every step that trans people take in the world right now is an act of rebellion, because there's so many wanting us not to exist, more so than ever.
You get the feminists who think that transgender rights will affect women. You hear things like it's just men trying to get into female spaces. Now trust me, if you're going to try to do things like that, I'm sure there must be an easier option than living your life as a transgender person and taking all the knocks and the abuse.
Imagine you go to somewhere new for the first time and people tell you, no, you can't sit there. You're not allowed to sit there because of who you are or who you perceive yourself to be.
We have had no space as such to talk about our lives. Trans women hardly have positions of power in the structures of our society. We have no trans representation in most of our local authorities. So the debate that is happening about our lives are being had by cis people.
We're being told that we're not allowed these things because of who we are. And we are saying, no, we're going to do it anyway, because we deserve it just like everybody else.
So I'm no threat to females, I'm no threat to anybody. I just want to live my life in peace and be accepted for who I am. And I think that's a basic human right for us all, to be accepted, you know.
When you openly challenge the views of some people who are discriminatory or homophobic or transphobic, that then requires them to think about those views and to have to justify them.
I think it's time that our political parties no longer treated our rights and our equality as a matter of conscience.
Travel to the big cities to celebrate Pride, and I think that's an incredible experience when you're from a rural area, because you get to see how many of us there really are.
And congratulations on finally joining the human race and having your own Pride in Perth.
I think it's really important to have regional prides, opportunities for those communities to come out and say, look, we exist. We may be fewer and far between. You might be telling us that we don't belong here and we should move off to the cities where we belong, but we exist here, we have our own culture. And regional prides give us an opportunity to kind of amalgamate and mix and have those clash of cultures within the LGBT community. It's amazing.
I grew up in Newcastle, I grew up in a city, so when I was growing up it was the case that you knew prides happened and things like this. I felt like the rural community was never represented, especially at the city prides. As great as they were, you never felt like it was your community. You felt like you were just visiting that community for that weekend.
It is as natural to be homosexual as it is to be heterosexual. Homosexuality, in anything that consists of homosexuals are frequently considered.
I really fully expected there to be some hatred, and all we got was support. So we started off at the station square, and it kept filling up and filling up and filling up, and we were going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And we couldn't look at each other because we were so emotional with it.
I think I'm proudest of how open the community was to Pride and how involved the community wanted to be in Pride. Young people growing up in Auburn, they had never experienced a Pride or anything like that until we started in 2019. And it made such a difference to them.
We're all together kind of in the development of Pride as it goes forward, and I think it's wonderful that we've gone from 2 cities doing Pride to cities, towns and villages right across the country.
Maybe, at least in my experience, people from rural areas are more likely to be bigots.
It's not all, love and rainbows, unfortunately. We have, problems with hate crime. We've experienced that in our own backyard here in Fife. At the last Fife Pride event, there were rainbow flags torn down in the high street. They were burned, put on social media. I think the vast majority of people know that LGBT equality is not going away, and we want to continue to champion that and continue to champion the voices of people who are not from the cities necessarily. Events like Pride prove that there's a community there, and that there's a feeling of equality and acceptance now in Scotland that perhaps has not been as evident in the past.
Last year and this year we ran digital events because of COVID-19. It was easier to just say, okay, instead of just cancelling or delaying our event, why don't we just throw it online?
I believe it's still really important that we do take the time to celebrate Pride. This is a chance for the LGBTI community and its allies to come together even as we stay apart. It's an opportunity to celebrate values like equality, diversity and solidarity.
With a digital Pride, there's no marching, there's no easy way to shout and protest for rights that we deserve.
We did do a virtual Pride between ourselves, Dunoon and Bute, and I would like to see more of that, of Prides coming together and doing some big event, especially the rural ones in Argyll and Bute. That's what I would like, and just for people to be able to feel that they can come out and not worry, just be themselves.
It also managed to reach more people that aren't necessarily able to leave the house to go to Pride events, so we're now hoping that we can continue Pride events with a combination of both.
You would like to think that we're progressing in a direction where in 5 or 10 years' time, the necessity to be visible and be very public about the issues that discriminate against LGBTQ+ people just aren't there, or they have diminished so much that Pride becomes, the marking of a Pride Day becomes a different thing, but I don't see that happening.
It's weird because we're meant to be in an era of acceptance, but we're not really.
Still today, there is a need for us to fight for equality and rights.
We still suffer from, bi erasure happening all the time because bisexual people are just seen as people who can't choose a side, which is obviously extremely hurtful. From outside the community, there's this kind of same type of view that especially bisexual women are just promiscuous women who want to have a lot of sex and maybe they're just a sexual tourist, or maybe they are on their way to becoming a lesbian. And there's these really dangerous stereotypes that erase the identity as a whole.
As a Pride organisation, I always feel it's important that we still talk about that. We don't just go, yeah, everything's fine now. Gay people can get married, that's fine, we're happy now. But no, there's still a long way to go. The fact that conversion therapy is still not banned in the UK as a whole in 2021, and a lot of people don't know that.
Conversion therapy is a thing. It's absolutely happening in Scotland. It's absolutely happening in churches here now. These so-called therapies can manifest in different forms, from pseudo-psychological treatments and aversion therapies to religious and faith settings conducting things like exorcisms or casting out gay demons. The results are deeply damaging for the people that go through it. For me personally, it's taken a decade of person-centred therapy to unpack 23 years of internalised homophobia.
I absolutely think that conversion therapy must be banned everywhere, always and forever.
Everyone should be treated exactly the same, and until we have equality for every single person that is LGBTQ+, then none of us have total equality. So a lot of people who are trans are still having to fight for their rights continually.
Gender Recognition Act for me is confusing for me as a transgender person. There's so many different facets of it now, and so many chop and changes. This is going to happen, that's going to happen. But I do resent the fact that it's seen as a psychiatric issue, a mental health issue, and you've got to go and pay to justify who you are. I always know who I am. I'm me, I'm Natalie. I'm a woman, I feel I should be a woman. All my friends and everybody that knows me accept me as a woman.
I can only describe it as a violent experience. It started off as a debate, but it has reached a place right now where a small minority of people have had the years of some very influential politicians in particular and turned this into a debate on the existence of trans people, particularly on the rights of young trans children or the existence of trans children itself. And it completely excludes or does not legally acknowledge the existence of non-binary people.
The options for self-identification that are normally presented to you aren't all that's available, and I think maybe the vast majority of people still feel that male and female are the only genders. For me, being non-binary is about the acceptance that you are existing somewhere between or outside the normal gender binary of male and female. In an ideal world, you could be non-binary and it would just be a little note on your personality or maybe it wouldn't even need to be mentioned. We would just be open-minded and ask questions and listen before making assumptions.
I'm very concerned that a lot of the change that happened positively in my lifetime was driven by political challenges in Europe and the European Court of Human Rights, and that we're no longer a part of that bigger system, and that can be used as an opportunity to roll back at very hard-won civil rights in this country.
While we progress our laws, we've also got to progress our society, and those things have to go together.
I am hopeful for the future because of places like this and films like this and me being able to speak like this, and that privilege is what we really need to take advantage of. Being able to march in the street and celebrate and dance and campaign and shout and scream, and it's not a secret, it's not something we need to be hidden away and scared of being found out.
I'm proud of how far we've come. When I came out, people didn't even know that bisexuality was really a thing. They thought it was just either you're gay or you're lesbian.
At the end of the day, love should be celebrated, by everybody. Love is love, and everybody should be proud of who they are and who they love.
Hey sister, do you have the time or the energy to come with me and stand and fight? There's a one in a lifetime chance to be here, and I'm pretty sure we made it, and I'm pretty sure we'll make it till next year. Pretty sure we'll go down in history. Pretty sure we will take the victory. Tonight we will solve the mystery and dance and sing.